I still remember the night that forever altered my understanding of fear. A night in the frozen expanse of northern Canada, when the legend of the Wendigo was not just a whispered myth, but a searing reality that clawed at the edges of my sanity. I had set out on a solitary expedition into this isolated wilderness, driven by a relentless desire to capture the raw terror and wild beauty of nature for my YouTube channel. The journey was arduous from the start. Endless fields of snow stretched out beneath a starless sky, and the bitter wind cut through me like shards of ice, each gust whispering ancient secrets through the gnarled branches of towering pines. As darkness fell and the temperature plummeted, I pitched my tent on a ridge overlooking a vast, silent forest, a place that local lore claimed was cursed by an ancient spirit doomed to wander in eternal hunger. It wasn't long before, in the near-total silence punctuated only by the howl of the wind, I first noticed them. Two intensely burning red eyes, glowing with an unearthly light in the distance. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing more than a trick of the light, a reflection off an animal's eyes, or a strayed beam from a distant vehicle. But as the minutes ticked by, the eyes reappeared with relentless persistence, following my every movement with an eerie, predatory intelligence that froze my blood. With my heart hammering against my ribcage, I fumbled for my camera, desperately clicking to capture proof of what I was witnessing. The red orb seemed to pulse in time with the beating of my heart, a malevolent beacon in the white oblivion. Every time I dared to take a step outside my tent, the eyes glimmered again, closer this time, as if the creature was stalking me through the swirling snow. The forest, once a majestic expanse of untouched wilderness, began to warp into a twisted labyrinth of looming silhouettes and shifting shadows. The wind carried with it ghostly whispers that sounded almost like tormented voices, a low, mournful wail that chilled me to the very core. I pressed on along a narrow, icy trail, the crunch of my boots on the frozen ground a rhythmic counterpoint to my escalating terror, until the legends of the Wendigo, stories passed down by indigenous elders, warning of a cannibalistic spirit condemned to roam these desolate lands, filled my mind with dread. As I ventured deeper, the atmosphere became unbearably oppressive, as though the very air was charged with an ancient malice. I recall the moment when the forest seemed to come alive with foreboding energy. The branches of skeletal trees reached out like grasping hands, and the darkness between them pulsed with a sinister glow. Suddenly, through the swirling snow and swirling mist, the creature emerged. It was a gaunt, emaciated silhouette cloaked in ragged fur, its movements disturbingly silent yet undeniably predatory. Its eyes, two fierce, unblinking coals of red fire, seemed to fix on me with an intensity that spoke of centuries of hunger and despair. For what felt like an eternity, time itself slowed. I stood, rooted to the spot, as the creature's gaze penetrated the veil between myth and man, promising unspeakable retribution. In that frozen tableau, every instinct screamed at me to flee, but a paralyzing terror held me captive, as if the Wendigo had reached inside my soul and entwined its cursed fate with mine. Desperation surged through me, and with trembling fingers, I began to record a frantic video log, my voice barely audible over the howling wind. I described every detail, the rhythmic pulsation of its eyes, the haunting growl that seemed to reverberate from the depths of the forest, and the unnatural silence that fell each time it blinked. I recounted how the snow beneath my feet transformed into a mosaic of deep, dark footprints that led in the direction of the creature, only to vanish as mysteriously as they had appeared. The legends of the Wendigo, once abstract tales of caution, now manifested before me in a raw, visceral horror. The creature's eyes, burning like twin infernos, seemed to communicate in a language older than time, a silent promise of endless hunger, of a curse that could devour the soul of anyone who dared to trespass its domain. I pressed forward along a treacherous trail, each step a battle against the icy grip of fear. The forest around me grew eerily still, and every snapping twig and distant rustle felt amplified, as if the wilderness itself was holding its breath in anticipation of what might come next. I caught fleeting glimpses of the Wendigo darting between trees, its body contorting in unnatural ways, its skeletal frame illuminated briefly by the flash of my camera. My mind, already reeling from the shock of the encounter, began to spiral into a nightmarish blend of reality and legend. I recalled the elders' warnings, that the Wendigo was not merely a creature of flesh and bone, but a manifestation of human greed and the insatiable hunger for power, a spirit that feasted on the souls of the lost and the desperate. As I continued my journey, the oppressive cold deepened, and I could almost hear the ragged, despairing whispers of past victims carried on the wind, merging with the creature's low, guttural snarl. Hours seemed to stretch into an eternity as I made my way through the frozen wasteland. The snow, once a pristine canvas, now bore the stains of something dark and sinister, and the aurora overhead cast a surreal, shifting glow that lent an otherworldly quality to the night. I moved with a frenetic urgency, my breath coming in ragged clouds, as I struggled to outrun the creeping dread that clawed at my mind. Every now and then, I would catch sight of that relentless red glow, its intensity a reminder that I was not alone in this forsaken land. The creature's pursuit was unyielding, its presence a constant, terrifying specter that transformed each shadow into a potential predator and every rustle of wind into the sound of its approach. At one point, the trail led me to a narrow, ice-covered ravine where the air was so cold it burned my lungs. Here, the landscape seemed to distort into a surreal nightmare, stalactites of ice glimmering like shards of broken glass, and a chasm so deep that the abyss below swallowed every sound. As I crept along the edge, I caught a glimpse of the Wendigo's reflection in the frozen water at the bottom, a distorted, monstrous visage that defied all human logic. In that moment, terror and awe mingled in my veins. I felt as though the creature was not merely stalking me, but communicating a message of ancient sorrow and unending torment. My every instinct urged me to retreat, but a morbid curiosity compelled me to press on, to capture more of the inexplicable horror that had invaded my reality. The hours melted away in a haze of fear and cold as I struggled to reach a clearing where I might find refuge. Every snap of a twig and every gust of wind was magnified by the oppressive silence of the forest, and I could sense the Wendigo's presence at every turn. I began to speak aloud in a desperate bid for sanity, recording my observations with a shaky voice that trembled with both terror and disbelief. I detailed the intricate patterns of the footprints, the erratic movement of the creature, and the way its eyes flickered with a spectral light that seemed to pulse in time with my own heartbeat. My narrative was interspersed with frantic pauses, as if my mind were caught between the rational world I knew and the incomprehensible reality of the supernatural. I questioned if the creature was a mere beast driven by hunger or a cursed spirit born of human folly, an embodiment of the darkest corners of our collective psyche. At long last, I emerged into a vast, open clearing, the oppressive weight of the forest momentarily lifted by the expansive sky overhead. Here, bathed in the weak light of dawn, I finally allowed myself to collapse against a snowbank, gasping for breath as the icy wind carried away the remnants of my fear. Yet, even in that fleeting moment of respite, the memory of the Wendigo's relentless gaze haunted me. Those burning red eyes, which had tracked me through the night and seemed to promise that the hunt was far from over. I sat there, shivering uncontrollably, while the forest around me resumed its silent vigil, the only sound the distant echo of my ragged breathing mingling with the faint, mournful calls of unseen creatures. In the days that followed, I painstakingly reviewed the footage I had captured, each frame a surreal mosaic of fear and fleeting glimpses of the creature, a spectral reminder that some legends transcend the boundaries of myth and manifest in our world as real, unyielding horrors. The recordings showed not only the red eyes, but also shadowy forms moving with unnatural fluidity, and they captured moments of inexplicable distortion, as if the very fabric of reality had been torn asunder by the creature's presence. Despite my best efforts to analyze the footage, the images defied conventional explanation, leaving me with more questions than answers. I became haunted by nightmares, where I was perpetually pursued through an endless winter landscape, the Wendigo's eyes burning into my consciousness, and its low, resonant growl echoing through corridors of ice and shadow. Sleep, once a refuge, turned into a battleground where the creature's spectral presence invaded every corner of my mind. I found myself compelled to share my ordeal with others, turning my channel into a chronicle of my descent into fear, a desperate attempt to warn anyone who might wander into the remote, frozen wilderness. I detailed my encounter with the Wendigo, the endless pursuit, and the chilling realization that the line between myth and reality is far thinner than we dare to imagine. Every comment and message I received was laced with a mixture of skepticism and unease. As viewers recounted their own strange encounters in isolated parts of the world, their stories echoing my own. Despite the support, I remained deeply unsettled, knowing that the creature's ancient hunger was not easily quelled, that its red eyes and relentless pursuit were a reminder of a timeless terror that could one day reach beyond the frozen forests into our own lives. Even now, as I sit in the relative safety of my warm home far from the icy grip of that cursed wilderness, I can still feel the lingering chill of that encounter. The memory of those burning eyes etched into the back of my mind, a constant reminder that some legends are not confined to the realm of folklore, but dwell in the dark, silent corners of our world, waiting for the moment when they can claim another soul. And so, with my heart still pounding at the mere thought of that relentless gaze, I leave you with this final, haunting question. Have you ever felt the icy stare of an ancient predator in the dead of night? A gaze so intense and merciless that it left you questioning the very nature of reality, and convinced you that the legends of old are not merely stories, but warnings etched in blood and ice, waiting to be awakened in the quiet, frozen depths of our world.